Welcome to Downtown Sports. My name is Downtown Stephen Brown, and in today's video, guys, we got a lot to get to when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They got a new look top line, so we'll go over that and the struggles of the first line to start the season so far. There's an update on Jake Muzzin and Timothy Liljegren as well, and we'll go over their last couple of games. So starting with that top line, it looks like Alex Kerfoot and Michael Bunting have flipped places. Alex Kerfoot playing on the top line with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, and Michael Bunting skating on a line with Calle Yarncroc and Dennis Malgin. And that top line has struggled to start the season. Austin Matthews has just one goal in 7 games. Mitch Marner also has just one goal, and Michael Bunting has only 2. But yet, the team is 4-3-0. But if we're looking at the results for Bunting, Matthews, and Marner at 5-on-5 from this season so far in just 7 games and compare them to their previous year in terms of the shot attempts, the actual shots, the expected goals, the scoring chances, the high danger shot attempts, and even their usage, it's all fairly similar. The one place where it's not is just the shooting percentage, and that's something that fluctuates as the season goes. It was just a couple of days ago that the bottom 3 teams in the NHL at 5-on-5 in terms of shooting percentage were the Edmonton Oilers, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Colorado Avalanche. Do we believe that those teams aren't generating enough scoring opportunities with the talent that they have there? I mean, if we've watched the Maple Leaf games to start the season, the first 7 games, there were games where they've been obviously better than others, but I think that top line is still generating good quality scoring chances. They just haven't gone in. Matthews is also leading the NHL in terms of individual scoring chances for at 5-on-5, so he is getting his looks, he is getting those opportunities, but the puck's just not falling for him. But there's also a conversation to be had of maybe this guy's playing a bit banged up. You know, we've seen him grab his hip at times, we've seen him grimace a bit when he gets towards the bench, and he has made it a point to play a bit more physical this year, to block some more shots and throw some more hits. And in terms of forwards in the NHL, Austin Matthews is currently 20th in hits, which is something that he's never really done before. So maybe he's getting his game acclimated to playing that new style. You know, he's dealing with a few more bumps and bruises than what he usually would, because there are some scoring opportunities and there are some shots that he's taken this year where he's missed, where in years past, those were just dialed for the back of the net. But then again, that's all just speculation. But I'm going to lean more towards it just being shooting luck, because if we're taking a look at where the offense and where the shots and opportunities are coming for Austin Matthews at 5-on-5 with the Maple Leafs this year, I don't think you could do much better in terms of the quality and quantity of those shots there. The goals are going to come. They're going to come in bunches, and it could happen tonight against the San Jose Sharks. But I like this quote from Sheldon Keefe, because when everyone found out that the Maple Leafs were splitting up that top line, everyone made the conversation naturally about Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and their slow start to the season and how they've sort of started to pick it up in their recent games. But if we're looking at their numbers at 5-on-5 from this year compared to last year, they're still getting their looks. They're still generating their chances. I think that's more just a case of bad puck luck. But Sheldon Keefe on why he shook up the lines, we haven't been scoring and controlling the play the way we would like to, particularly from our bottom 6. So in hearing that, I think this shakeup has more to do with getting the bottom 6 going than it does Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner. I think those guys are going to be just fine. The fourth line for the Maple Leafs this year has primarily been David Kampf with Nick Aubé-Kubel and Zach Aston-Reese, but playing together through 5 games at 5-on-5, they've kind of gotten caved in, and I said it at the start of the season, I didn't really like the way their bottom 6 was constructed. I like the players that are in it, just not necessarily the line combinations that they went with. And then after Matt Murray was placed on LTIR, they get a little bit more cap flexibility. They call up Kyle Clifford and Wayne Simmons. They give those guys an opportunity on the fourth line. And I like their game. They served their purpose. However, if you're there to swing momentum in the team's favor, you can't be taking bad penalties. It just can't be the case. And they got those 2 guys in the lineup by benching a guy like Pierre Engvall and even Nick Aubé-Kubel. And Sheldon Keefe just wants to see more from those guys. They're capable of more. We've seen more from Engvall in the past, and from Nick Aubé-Kubel's time in Colorado and even Philadelphia, we also know that he's capable of more as well. And Pierre Engvall's been a type of player that's been in Sheldon Keefe's doghouse, even going back to their time together with the Toronto Marlies. Because if you watch him play, he has all the tools to be capable of playing a very dynamic 2-way game. For Engvall, it's just about finding consistency. This is a guy who signed a 1-year deal who's going to be a UFA at the end of this season. For a guy who signed a bet-on-me type deal, he hasn't shown very much consistency. He hasn't taken that next step in his game. But also, to be fair to him, he did suffer an ankle injury earlier on in training camp, and maybe he's still dealing with that. So we'll have to see how he plays over the next couple of weeks, because he's been reunited with David Kampf. And the exciting thing about that is that every single line combination that these two guys played on last year, no matter how tough the defensive assignments were, they were awesome. And I said this to start the season. I didn't like the bottom six line combinations because I wanted to see Pierre Engvall and David Kampf playing together. But for Engvall, like we said, I think it's more just about being consistent, because he showed last year that he was capable of being a very effective two-way player, but they need more from him. You know, a guy like Austin Matthews scores 60 goals last season. He's not just complacent with his game. He's adding to it this year by playing more physical, throwing more hits, blocking more shots, taking on that role. It's not good enough to just play the way that they have in years past and expect to win, because they haven't. And for a guy like Austin to lead that way, that's awesome, but everybody else has got to follow suit as well. The Maple Leafs are expecting more from their players this year, and we're going to see who answers that bell. But moving on to Jake Muzzin, the latest with him is that the Maple Leafs have placed him on LTIR on October the 25th, and that frees up $5.625 million in cap space for the foreseeable future. We were having conversations in the offseason all summer long what the Toronto Maple Leafs should do with Jake Muzzin. Should they move on from him similarly to how the Tampa Bay Lightning moved on from Ryan McDonagh, or should they keep him? And I was saying, hey, they know more about the situation than us. If they're expecting him to be healthy, if they're expecting him to be okay. He played quite well in that series against the Tampa Bay Lightning, given the competition that he was going up against. You know, guys like Steven Stamkos and Andre Palat and Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point, Alex Killorn. It's a very talented offensive team, and he does play very harsh defensive minutes. And I was saying, if he's going to be healthy, yeah, of course, I want Jake Muzzin on the team. But if there was any reason to believe that this year was going to be similar to last year, where he's hurt, healthy, hurt, healthy, hurt, healthy, they needed to move on from him. And ultimately, they knew more about the situation than we did, and it didn't take much. Because Mitch Marner, the day after Muzzin suffered the injury, said, obviously for him, it's just making sure that if he does come back and play this year, or whatever happens, just make sure that he's going to be able to do whatever he wants to do the rest of his life and enjoy the time with his family and his kids. And this made it sound like the injury was super serious. And Muzzin is one of Marner's better friends on the team, so maybe you could speculate that Marner knows something about his health that we don't, but at the same time, this is kind of stating the obvious, right? We want Jake Muzzin, the person, to be okay after hockey, but also, there's Jake Muzzin, the hockey player. Those are two separate things, and right now for the Toronto Maple Leafs, they need to worry about both. I'm having a very hard time articulating my point here without sounding like a complete ass and without sounding just really cold-hearted, because of the nature of the injury, the nature of the situation, how much Muzzin means to the locker room, the team, and, you know, the fans as well. He's an awesome player. But the question is not whether or not he could come back and play well. The question is, can he come back, play well, and stay healthy? And if either party has their doubts about that, I mean, it's not fair that he just sits out for the rest of the year so that the Maple Leafs can pull some cap shenanigans at this year's trade deadline and add to the team. But also, I don't see how it's fair to the Maple Leafs either. You know, this is a very critical season, and I'm sure Jake wants nothing but to be a part of the solution here. I want him to be part of the solution as well. But there's too much riding on this season to bet on something that's a question mark. And that sounds awful, and I hate saying it like that, but that's where we are right now. But for now, I don't see how the Maple Leafs have success this year, having $5.6 million tied up in a player that they just don't know. And that goes for Matt Murray as well, right? You know, but it's not their fault. It's not anything personal. It's just a fact of the matter. It's just the situation that we're in. After the Maple Leafs placed Jake Muzzin on long-term injury reserve, they also sent Jordy Ben and Timothy Liljegren to the American Hockey League on long-term injury reserve conditioning stints, and they can play 3 to 5 games there before, I assume, being called up to the Toronto Maple Leafs and making their season debuts. The blue line for the Maple Leafs this year, has been razor thin with all the injuries that they've suffered to start the season, but I felt like they've gotten decent contributions from guys like Victor Mete. Rasmus Sandin looks really good to start the season. We've talked about some of their other pairings to start the year as well. Morgan Riley and TJ Brody has really struggled. Justin Hall has had his moments, but getting Timothy Liljegren back into this lineup, we did a video a couple of weeks ago talking about, if he could take a next step in his development, that would be huge for this team. And in his first game with the Toronto Marlies, he laid a bomb of a hit, an open ice hit as well. I'll leave a video of it linked in the description if you want to check that out afterwards. You need to follow Nick on Twitter for all the Toronto Marlies updates. He's also an awesome guy and a friend of mine. I went to school with him. Really excited for Timothy Liljegren to be back and playing in this lineup, and I'm also excited to see what Jordy Ben can bring to it as well. But just to go over the last couple of games for the Maple Leafs really quickly here, I thought that they played their most complete game of the season against the Winnipeg Jets. Like we said, when it comes to guys like Wayne Simmonds and Kyle Clifford, they're obviously there to do a job, swing momentum in favor of the Maple Leafs, not to the other teams. So they got to be careful about the penalties that they're taking. But I thought that Ilya Samsonov played amazing in this game. He kept them in it. They went down early, 1-0 to the Jets, but he made some really awesome saves until the Maple Leafs offense came back and took advantage of all the power plays that they had in this game, because this was one of those games that had the potential of being really dirty, and that's why Simmonds and Clifford were in the lineup to begin with, but it wasn't necessarily those guys that were answering the bell when it came time to. It was a guy like Morgan Riley, and that's awesome to see. You got to rally the troops. It can't just be Simmonds and Clifford. They're not on the ice very often. What are the chances that they're going to be on the ice when something actually happens, like Mitch Marner getting plastered into the boards? Although the team didn't really respond to it, but then again, if you watch the replay, I don't even know if the team necessarily saw it. So, I don't know. It's a bit of a gray area. But this was a really chippy game. It was probably the Maple Leafs' best game of the season so far. I really liked their play. The game against the Vegas Golden Knights was very frustrating because the Maple Leafs go down early 1-0 in this game. It could have been 2-0, but Phil's 400th goal got called back, and thank God that it did, because we don't need that type of evil in our lives, right? The 2 Stanley Cups with Pittsburgh was more than enough. But glad to see that Phil is still in the league and playing well. He scored his 400th the other night playing against San Jose on James Reimer, of all people. But like I said, I thought the Maple Leafs, they started really flat. They were really slow. They didn't respond to the speed from the Golden Knights very well in this one, but Samsonov kept them in the game, and they were able to tie it at 1. But after that, they didn't really do much else. A couple of really bad turnovers, a couple of really bad mental lapses when it comes to their defense, and the Golden Knights capitalized. The Maple Leafs didn't do a very good job defending speed last year, and it looks like they're struggling with that again this season. So something to definitely keep in mind as we go, and something to definitely keep in mind when we're talking about potential players that they can acquire this year to maybe help with that. But that's going to be it for the video, guys. Make sure to like it if you did like it, and subscribe for more, because more is always on the way. And guys, I'll see you again in the next one.